Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Cheryl Leitschuh, author of Straight Talk for Smart Business Women, Critical Tools to Build and Grow Your Business. Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Paul. I can't wait.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did. You get 3 gold stars for that one because most people don't.
Thank you very much. And Cheryl, you did coach me through that, so I appreciate the help, and I'm looking forward to this conversation today. So are you ready to get started with our questions?
I sure am.
All right. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
The biggest thing that I said, and this actually happened in a conversation I had this morning, where somebody was like, I'm trying to write this book about XYZ, and I don't know that everybody will read it. And I said, don't worry about everybody reading it. You have a message that needs to be heard, but not by everyone. Every book has its niche. Every book has its target area that it's trying to address. And so that's the key. Just write the message that you believe your fans will want to hear. And usually it's the message you want to hear, right? So don't worry about writing a message, writing a book that's going to fit everybody. If you do that, you'll never start writing because you can't write a book that's going to fit everybody. But worry about or think about writing the book that's right for the niche that you're trying to target. Does that make sense?
That makes crystal sense. And that's one thing I think more authors need to realize is you do need to create your book with your target market in mind. So if you're doing a nonfiction business book, you know your target market. If you're doing a travel book, you know that target market. So you can't have everything for everyone, because as closer as you target in, that's going to give you the greatest opportunity not only to sell your book, but also to potentially help people with your services, coaching, consulting, publishing, counseling, whatever service that you want to offer with your book. You have got to know your target market, because if you just put it out in a wide net, then you're not going to be able to really zero in on the maximum people that you can truly help.
And that will help you write your book. You know, I always say a good book is a done book, right? Because it will always change. Every book I've written, as soon as it's written, I'm like, oh, I should have put that in there. What about this? Oh, I wish I'd have said this instead of that. Well, if you get stuck in that head talk early on, and you're not clear about who your target market is, you're gonna get stuck. And that's what I see with a lot of people that I know that I coach and mentor, is they get stuck in the book writing process because they don't go back to, well, if I was just having a conversation with this ideal client, this ideal target market, you'd probably be able to come up with that conversation. But if you're trying to write too big, or if you distract yourself, you're just going to get lost. So I would say just write from who is it that I'm trying to speak to.
And done is better than perfect. It's just a louder conversation with a good friend. It's just like public speaking, where you're giving a seminar, you're having a louder conversation with a good friend. It's the same thing with your book.
Mm-hmm. And somebody else can edit it later. So even just don't worry about the right words, the right way to say it. Again, that's where your perfectionism and that mind chatter gets in the way. Just start writing, and later on you can go back and edit. I would say it's harder to create than it is to edit. So just start the process, speaking as if you're talking to your target audience, and you can go back later and edit it. But when you're trying to edit ahead of time, you're trying to get too big, you're just not going to start.
Yeah, just get it done, send it to an editor, have them clean it up, but invest in an editor. I always talk about the 3 keys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you got to have, that's your biggest key. I mean, your book cover is critical, your book description is critical, but man, you have got to have a well-edited book. Otherwise, it looks like a pamphlet.
Yep, exactly. And it's important you have the editor who understands your voice. I've had editors that try to rewrite it, and it's like, that doesn't even sound like me. And your tone and your pace, and so having a good editor is really important. And there's a lot of people out there who call themselves editors, but all they do is know how to cross T's and dot I's, and they don't really get the sentence flow, the content flow. We could get into a lot of depth about editing, but a good editor is so important.
Well, and when you find one, keep them. I was very blessed to find my amazing editor 4 years ago. She's done all 14 of my books, and it really does make the difference, because you're right. They get the tone, they get your voice, they understand where you're coming from, and then you can also ask you clarity questions going, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Or what do you think about clarifying this a little bit? And just taking that feedback, it makes it the best product possible. Because the easiest part about getting published, in my view, is getting the content done, getting that draft finished. The hardest part, which we're going to go to our next question, I'll give you my response to that in just a moment, but obviously it's going to involve editing, but most importantly, proofreading. I hate to proofread more than anything. So when I got to proofread my own stuff, it's a nightmare, because I'm like, okay, I got to go through this entire book, and I'm always going to catch a few mistakes, and it's just part of it. You could be a part of a traditional Big Five publisher. You're still going to find mistakes in those books. There is no perfect book out there. There will never be a perfect book out there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
So what do you feel is the hardest part then about getting published?
You touched on it, Paul, and just a second ago. To me, it's the details, and it's because I'm not a detail person, and I don't know. My sense of most of the writers I know is they're not really good at detail. They're good at the writing. They're good at creating. They're good at telling the story, but they sometimes aren't good at that detail, like formatting the pages, and as you said, editing and making sure that the flow works right. I need a different brain who looks at it differently. So, and that takes time. So the other piece that is the hardest part about getting published for me is patience, because once I'm done writing, I figure, okay, shoot, out the door, right? Not quite. There's some other pieces that need to go into the process, and that's where you need a great team of people to help it get out the door. The first 2 books I wrote, I did it all myself, and it was painful, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And so a lot of things got missed in the process. And then when I began to say, oh, no, I need a team to do this, Cheryl, you're not Superwoman. You do need to have a team behind you. Then the publishing process became much easier, even though it never operated as fast as I wanted it to. But that was good, because slowing down was a good piece. Slowing down to get it, have it become more successful was so important along the way. So for me, it was the details and the speed. I needed to work on my patience muscle in the midst of the publishing process.
Well, and you must have a CEO mentality with your book. You got to send it to an editor, send it to formatting, have your book cover designer make sure you get the best design possible, and then just approve it or send it back going, hey, make a fix. But you got to run your business. You have to run your book like a business. And you have to be the CEO. You have to make sure you have the right people in those critical areas, and let them do their job. They have one job. Let them focus on it. And I think that's one of the biggest things, especially with your books and as you progress to doing multiple books down the line.
Oh, that your line of you have to run it like a business. Boy, if anybody's taking notes listening to this, I would say write that in capital letters and post it on your desktop, because I've had a couple of people come to me, and they've written their book. They've got it all published, and it's all really pretty. They've done it themselves, but they don't have a business strategy behind it.
Yep.
And so they wonder why it's not selling, because it's there. Yeah, okay, that, and how many million other books are out there on Amazon. They don't have that whole CEO mindset behind why, what's the model? Why am I publishing this book? Who is it that I want to read? What's my goals? All of those things that you put into a good business plan to make it successful, and not just words you speak to yourself, but words that you can touch the world with.
Absolutely. And this transitions nicely to our next question, and that is, of course, the funnest part about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launches that has worked well.
Well, and so I love marketing. So that's probably, I may be a little unique that way, or because I love marketing. So, I've been in business. I'm older than dirt. I've been in business for 30 years, and my first book came out 25 years ago, where we didn't even have email. I know some of your listeners are like, what? There's no email? Yeah, once upon a time, there was no email. But the strategy I used then was speaking. And inviting people to, speaking at events, speaking for organizations. There's a million organizations. I don't care what your target audience is. There's always organizations that you can reach out to speak to. So, back in the day, making myself sound ancient, but I just went to the library and I looked up associations that had the target market that I was looking for at that time. And then I just sent out a nicely done flyer about here's a speaking topic. And by the way, I've also got a book, and here's my book. And that strategy has served me throughout all the books, even though now we have a lot of social media. I love social media. I've done a lot of things with social media, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But speaking has always been my forte. And part of it is I love speaking. I love getting in front of people, and I can feel their energy and being able to share my message. And there's always going to be some in the audience that you really touch with your message. Some you're not going to, but some you do. And that's always fun, because then I see the value of the books that I've done, and then people buy it and they refer other people to the book. This last book, The Straight Talk for Smart Businesswomen, I truly delved into social media, but the book came from my podcast. So I have a podcast by the same name, and it's a compilation of all the wisdom that came from those podcasts. So it's all the lessons that these wise women-owned small businesses generated in my podcast interviews, and I just pulled that together into a book. So I have 37 different interviews, individuals who contributed to that book. They became my marketing team. And through their own social media, I just said, would you be willing to market this book? You're in it after all, and I'm talking about you, and I'm promoting your business in the book. And 35 of the 37 said yes. The two of them that didn't no longer have their business, so they didn't really care. They didn't have a need to, right? They decided to close their shop. And I actually talk about one of them in the book and why they closed their shop. But so these 35 people, all on the same day, they said on the same day, we're going to do the book launch, and I want you to take a picture of the cover of the book, make some nice statement about the book, and post it to your social network. And we did. And it just rolled out beautifully. The sales on Amazon I could track. I mean, that's the thing, too, now with all the technology ways of tracking the connections you're getting, the sales you're making, where your leads are coming from. And it was just fun. It was just so fun to see, because the energy of the team coming together really made it very viable. So I don't care if you have 5 people or 35 people or 135 people. You can do that strategy in your book launch to roll it out to many more people than just the people that are connected to you.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of our projects, as we were talking about prior to the show, was that I'm beginning the journey of our first 100-person business book. And we've already recruited roughly 40 businesses ever since the start of January, so roughly 2 months. And that's one of the tools that I was talking about with you, was prior to when we get the book out there, we're going to have all 100 authors promoting the book. But also when it goes live, having that same social media strategy where they're potentially taking a picture of the book or doing a post about it, because then you have 100 ambassadors that are out there promoting your book, because being as part of our project is we're able to promote their business and get it out to a ton of people. But to be able to utilize 100 different ambassadors to promote your business, to promote your book, is just such a great way where it's a win-win. It helps them and it helps us as well.
And it's just so fun. It's just a strategy that it'd be silly to ignore with the way the technology world is working, and the way we can connect into so many more people and so many more networks is brilliant. I love your new 100-person book idea. I think that is great. I think that's a very smart move.
Well, when we started the podcast, one of the things I talked about was I wanted to make it my mission to help as many people as possible get published in 2019 and beyond. So that was my accountability, was to create our Get Published business book, because we do want to help as many people share their story, because we've all heard of the stat where less than 1% of people ever get published. And there's so many people that want to get a book out there. So I'm doing everything I can, at least on my side, with Brodie Consulting, to make sure that we can help people share their story, because everyone has a story in them, and it's our job to help them get that story out in the world.
Yes, I love it, Paul. I love it. Good for you.
Well, speaking of books, so what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Yeah, so the books I love to read are business and psychology books, and my favorite book right now, for the moment, is Brendon Burchard's High Performance Habits: How Extraordinary People Become That Way. And he could probably have made this into 4 books. There's just so much information in that book. But the big thing for me that I loved in that book is he talks about how we limit our performance because we don't handle transitions well. And the way he describes it in the book is, you're working on something, or you have a business meeting, and now need to go and do something else. But oftentimes we don't leave the first thing behind before we go do something else. So we're still processing that first thing, and while we're trying to do the second thing, and we're not really making a good focus in our work and in our life. Okay. And I say in our life too, because since I've started using his tool is when you finish one thing, take a moment and truly just say, okay, put a boundary around that. I am now done with that. I'm going to move to this next thing. And you do kind of a ritual in that transition, so you truly can focus your brain in the next thing that you're moving into. I have found that so powerful, whether I'm talking to my husband and all of a sudden a phone call comes in, and then I'm trying to focus on my daughter and on the phone and what she's saying, and then go back to my husband, and all of a sudden I've got all this crazy stuff going on in my head. It's much easier to take that moment. Okay, I'm done with that conversation. Now I'm moving to the next one. Or when I'm writing, it's a great tool when you're writing. So many times you're interrupted by other things, but how do you just stay focused in the writing and clear everything else away, put it all into a box, because you'll address it later. So that to me has just been a huge tool that I use. And his book is full of them. That's why I said he could probably have 3 or 4 books out of that book. It's quite a fat book as well. But I love being able to focus and clear.
And for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote, whenever that brain chatter gets into my head of, I need to be perfect, is this the right message? I always go back to Marianne Williamson, who says, be the faucet, not the water. And what that does for me is it makes me realize that I'm just a vessel of talents and skills and wisdom and knowledge, and I just have to trust that. And if I trust that, the right messages will come out, the right tools will come out, the right ways that I need to connect with people will come out, versus when I try to be the water, then I'm trying to be perfect, and I'm trying to be just exactly what everybody wants, and I can't be that. But I can be the faucet, and I'll let that wisdom come through me. So that's my quote that I keep on my computer screen: be the faucet, not the water.
Excellent. Well, Cheryl, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
They can go to straighttalkforsmartbusinesswomen.com.
Excellent. Well, Cheryl, I want to thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Oh, thank you, Paul. This has been so delightful.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.